Welcome again to Real Spooky Stories. We have two spooky stories today from two less spooky people. Moving to a new house. Sometimes you'll just get the new house chills. You're a little nervous because it's new and you don't really know where to go apart from your old house. In this story, something is actually in there with them.
Hi, my name is Andrea Rumsey, and I'm going to tell you a couple of spooky stories that happened to me not too long ago. So my family and I moved fairly recently into a really old farmhouse. The house was built in the mid-1800s, and it still has a lot of the original architecture on the inside. And so while it's really beautiful and easy to appreciate, it can also kind of add to this sort of eerie quality about the house in general. So anyway, now that you know that we moved to this old house, I want to tell you what my weird stories are. So one night, I woke up in the middle of the night, just sort of a popping sound, and I thought that it was just we have radiator heating in our house, and so I thought that it was the radiators that were just kicking on that it made the noise. So I just thought, no biggie, okay, I'm gonna go back to sleep. And while I was trying to fall back asleep, I felt this tap on my wrist, and at first it was not a very firm tap. I could feel it, but it wasn't very hard. And then it got progressively harder until it felt like someone was slapping me on the wrist. So I opened my eyes, and there was nothing there. Couldn't see anything, couldn't smell anything, nothing. So I just kind of didn't think anything of it, and I went back to bed. But then another time, also late at night, when I had woken up in the middle of the night, I was again sort of in this state where I was partly asleep, partly awake. And I swear I felt something pulling the covers off of my body. And it felt so distinct that again, I got up in bed, took my eye mask off, but there was nothing there. And only two things like that have happened. And those were a little while ago now. Nothing has happened since. But it's hard for me to explain why they did.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your story.
Yep.
One question. Does this affect you at all today, or has it ever affected you since?
It does sometimes. I think I've decided that I don't want to let it bother me because I love where we live so much. But it definitely rests in the back of my mind, and I think about it. I think about it every now and then.
Sure. Thank you for sharing your story.
Of course.
Even though humans think that we have a pretty good perception on our reality, stories like those and other many untold stories can beg to differ, that we don't even know a little bit of what is going on in our universe. Since I was a little kid, I used to be afraid of going into deep bodies of water that you couldn't see the bottom of, especially one lake. So every year, my family goes to a camp up in Maine called Echo Lake, where it's basically like a summer camp outdoorsy thing. And I used to be afraid of the lake because there was this big snapping turtle in there. I had seen it a couple times, and it looked pretty scary. You know, it had like these big claws, and I was really freaked out about it. But I found that it basically can just disregard humans, and it does its own thing, just passes by us when we're swimming. And so I wasn't afraid of it, and I was glad because I could finally be back to the lake without being super scared of it. But one night I was at this sort of meeting thing, like this, I think it was a bingo night, and this girl in a bathing suit sort of burst through the door and was crying. And, you know, we were pretty alarmed because it's a pretty bad situation. And so some people came over to, like, you know, make sure that she's okay and her life isn't in danger. And eventually, it was a day later, the news got out that there are eels in that lake. I was definitely scared at that news because I didn't know that there are eels in there, and eels, they're sort of weird. They're like, you know, the weird little slimy underwater snakes. And that girl had actually got bit by one on her leg when she was swimming at night, and it actually went sort of deep, and she didn't go to the hospital, luckily, but you could definitely see a scar. It was, I used to be alright with it, but I used to be okay with the lake, but now I'm a little more scared of it because, you know, I don't want to get bit by an eel as well. I feel like that would hurt. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you guys for listening and tuning into this podcast, and I hope that more people can enjoy this as much as I do recording it. If you like this, then consider tuning in next time, just like always. Alright, thank you. Bye.